Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar with the outcomes of Carnegie Mellon, Duke, and Georgetown universities. My name is Harshita. I am the Students Operation Associate at Reach IV. Reach IV is a study abroad and career advisory. We help students pursue their higher education to universities across the world. And I'm joined by J.R. McGrath, who is the Executive Director of Admissions at the Carnegie Mellon University, Morgan Griffin, who is the Associate Director of Admissions at Duke University, and Shirley Heinrich, who is the Business Representative of Admissions at Georgetown University. So just before we get started, I just wanted to let you all know that if you have any questions, you can add it in the chat box and we can go over it as we progress in this webinar. And JR, Shelley, and Morgan, if you want to add your contact information, like any email that the students could use to contact you in the future, if they have any questions or concerns, you can add that in the chat box as well. So yeah, let's get started. Do you want to start with just giving a brief introduction of yourself and what it is that you do in your role? JR, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. Thank you. So as you said, my name is J.R. McGrath. I'm the Executive Director of Master's Admissions at Tepper, which essentially means that I run our admissions office for all of our different master's programs. So all of our MBA programs, as well as our Master of Science programs. I am from Pittsburgh, and I got my undergraduate degree in physics. My grad degree is in college administration. I've been working with I'll say high achieving college students for the last 20 years in many different capacities. But for the last 12 years have really spent my time within the graduate management space. Excited to, talk to you a little bit more about our school, but overall this process of applying to either MBA programs or other graduate business programs. I know it can be daunting, and hopefully we can maybe shed a little bit more light on, how to best represent yourself, but maybe take away some of that anxiety today. So nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. Morgan, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Griffin. I've been at Fuqua for 6 years now, and that time really has flown. It feels weird actually saying 6 years because it feels like I just started yesterday. But I help to manage all of our off-campus and recruitment events. So if you've ever joined us for an information session, I probably had a role in helping to plan that. I also serve as the admissions advisor for applicants who are applying from India. And actually, fun fact, the last international trip I took was to India. So hopefully getting back on the road here soon, but happy to be here and happy to answer all of your questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Shelley?
Yep, perfect. So hi, everyone. Shelley Heinrich. I'm the Associate Dean and Managing Director of MBA Admissions at Georgetown McDonough. Also serve as an Executive Director of Marketing for a few of our programs. So in my suite of portfolio is the full-time, part-time flex, part-time online. We also have an executive MBA in Dubai, which I work with, as well as a few other specialized masters within our portfolio. I've been at Georgetown for 10 years. I've worked in corporate, nonprofit, and higher education sectors, did a Master's of Education at University of Texas at Austin, and then an MBA at Georgetown. And I've worked at 4 different business schools. So happy to be here. I think we're all excited to help support you all as you make this next decision journey in your life. So look forward to chatting today.
Great, thank you. So to get started, would you like to give us a little bit of information about your university and about the School of Business?
Yes.
Morgan, do you want you can start.
Okay. I'll start. We'll reverse order. So yeah, absolutely. So Georgetown University, located in Washington, D.C., the heart of the nation's capital. We provide I would say a medium-sized cohort. We have 250 students that come through our full-time program, students from over 40 different countries. So when you're coming as an international student, you certainly feel welcomed both in DC and at Georgetown. Some of the highlights of our program, we really have a lot of experiential hands-on learning. So you start the program with an international mock consulting project in the month of August, and you cap off the program at the end with a global business consulting experience where you will actually consult for an international client for 6 to 8 weeks in a team. Consulting, meeting with the client weekly, and then going abroad to the country. Other things about our program that are unique, we have certificates that you can do as part of the program. And then, a lot of hands-on opportunities with companies and organizations in DC. I'll pause there. We'll talk more about Georgetown throughout the day, but that's a little bit about us. So maybe, JR, do you want to go next? I'll ping it to you.
Thanks, Shelley. So the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon University, we are located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Actually not too far from Shelley there in DC, like a 4-hour drive. So things about our program. So I think if you, or really our overall school, because we kind of do this for every different program, we believe in developing you in two sides of yourself. So one is to have you be able to get those hard creative problem solving skills that you would need to be a proficient business professional. And really that's to get everyone comfortable in a data rich environment. Now everyone can continue to take electives and really become that data expert, but that doesn't mean that everybody wants to do that. So we make sure that everyone, and when we go through the core of all of our different programs, you do that with that data lens, because what we have found from our alumni or corporate partners is that is really how they approach business. So we want to train you in the way that you are going to be working in the future. The second piece is going to be on the leadership side. We want to make sure that you have the leadership skills, the knowledge of yourself, the knowledge of how to work with others, as well as the communication skills to be able to take those really complicated problems and solutions that you're going to be working on and develop, and being able to articulate that to all of your different stakeholders, making sure anything that you have come up with becomes powerful. Lastly, that I'll kind of end here about the overview of the school. We very much believe in interdisciplinary learning. So we're going to try to put you in an environment where you're not only going to be taking classes here in the business school, you can take classes in every different college within Carnegie Mellon, as well as really we want you to get involved outside the classroom in some of these co-curricular environments as well, because we believe the world's biggest problems are interdisciplinary. We want you to really push your learning in that way. And I think we maybe go over this a little bit later, so I won't go into too many more details there, but you really get to tap into all that Carnegie Mellon has to offer, not just the business school. Morgan, I'll pass it to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, JR. So Duke's Fuqua School of Business, we're located in Durham, North Carolina. So I feel like we're now within a 4-hour radius of each other, because I would say too, we're about 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours from Georgetown. So a little bit south, but very quick flight up to Washington, DC, and all the other major cities here. Our kind of philosophy is we really believe in teamwork and collaboration. It's a big thing you'll hear if you've talked with anyone about Fuqua. You might have heard the Team Fuqua, which really represents our way of working and the types of leaders that we want to cultivate here at Fuqua to go into the business world and really make positive change. We believe in using business as a force for good. And that's not always just, bottom line of making money. While we all would like to make money and do well, it's about what's doing best and what's right for everyone involved from all stakeholders. So our program, it's a general management MBA program. But the great thing about it is, much like you've heard from JR and Shelley, is we do have different concentrations and certificates that allow you to customize your MBA. So certainly not a requirement, but this allows you that if you're interested in consulting, if you're interested in healthcare, finance, energy and environment, you can kind of customize your MBA and take classes that are of interest to you. One thing that's interesting about our class structure is they are 6-week terms. So it really tries to mimic what it's like working on a project when you go out, back into the business world. You start taking your core classes. We start a little bit early. Our class is getting ready to start next week, which is really crazy. I don't know where the summer went, but they will begin next week, their terms. And then in the spring, they can start taking their elective courses, which we believe really helps to prepare them when our students are going to do their internships in between their first and their second year. The other great thing about our program is we are completely STEM designated, so you don't need to add on a different concentration or certificate in order to get the STEM designation. Our entire program is STEM designated, which does allow for that additional OPT for our students if they're going into a STEM designated career. So that's really great. I've seen a lot of applicants specifically from India taking advantage of that, which has been really great for our students. And we're really happy that that happened. In addition, much like Shelley talked about, we have experiential learning opportunities. So we have a thing called Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum, which gives you hands-on consulting experience working with a company on an actual consulting project. We have a global academic travel experience where you learn about the business culture, everything about a country. Last year was South Africa. And then you actually get to go take a trip over there and kind of do company visits and meet with alumni and in a way say, here's what I learned in the classroom. Let me go see it for myself and experience that, which is really, really great. We're really getting big on innovation entrepreneurship. So there's different startup challenges that allow our students, if they have business ideas, to start working on those. And then if none of those fit your path, if you kind of want to chart your own territory, we do believe that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't always work. So you can customize, do a mentored study, and kind of customize your experiential learning opportunity under the guidance of an academic advisor or an alum, which is really, really nice and cool. Our class, it ranges anywhere from 380 students to 450 students. I would say like medium to large for our class, but we are roughly about 50% international students. We do have a very strong group of students that come from India. They're very involved in our student club called Indus, which is really cool. And they do a lot of wonderful things and kind of helping to bring the culture of India to Fuqua. And our students really learn from that, really enjoy it. Certainly the Diwali festival is very popular at Fuqua. And it's really great to see our students kind of bringing their culture and their values, their perspectives and experiences to the classroom and to the student life experience here. I will say another thing that is unique about our program is most business schools, they might give Fridays off. Our students have Wednesdays off. So we give them the middle of the week to kind of recoup. But usually Wednesdays are still reserved for club meetings and, recruiting events and all of that. But we really do try to encourage that collaborative team environment where people, encourage them to stay here in town. So you do get to meet your classmates and get that full MBA experience during the 2 years that you're here in Durham.
That's great to hear. I actually really like the fact that even though these programs are business oriented, there's still a quite diverse group of the range of things that people can do to expand on their profile, as well as just have more options open for them. So in terms of the criteria that you look for in incoming students, do you have anything specific in mind, or say in terms of the test scores, work experience, GPAs, extracurriculars, any red flags that people may have in their profile? How do you go about this? What are you looking for specifically?
I'm happy to kick us off this time.
Sure.
I think when applying to business school, and what I hear from a lot of my colleagues, and certainly JR and Shelley will share insight on theirs, is it's different from other grad school programs. I think, some grad programs like law and all that, it's very rigid, very cut and dry of, what they're looking for in applicants and who's admitted. Here at Fuqua, we take a very holistic approach, meaning we're going to look at every component of your application equally. So one data point, one test score, one number, nothing is going to completely determine if you are admitted to the program or not, because we do ask a lot of questions in our application and we look at all those and we look at all those questions equally. So we are going to look obviously at test scores. We do have research that shows that does help us to understand if you can handle a quant rigorous program, but you are much more than a 3-digit number. And so we're going to look at those things in the context of what is your work experience? What is your undergraduate experience? Does that show quant abilities versus, your score in a timed environment on one test? And so I would say more than just the things that we ask in the application we are looking for people that really do believe in our core values and our paired principles at Fuqua. So that collaborative, supportive environment, as well as valuing diverse perspectives, that is really important to us as well. There's no specific question on our application that asks that. That kind of is just woven and who you are as a person. And we're just trained to try and detect that when it comes to essays or interviews or letters of recommendation or those different things. But I would say in the application, we're wanting to learn more about you. We don't sit there with here's the list of criteria that every student needs to have that we admitted. We want people that come from different backgrounds, different experiences. And we want, we don't want a whole class of people that are just the same. You wouldn't learn anything if everyone was just like you. You're going to learn so much more from people that are vastly different from you. And so really when we're looking at it, it's more about who you are, your story, what makes you unique, what are those little things about you. I think it's natural for applicants to focus on test scores and, have I worked this many years of work? And I think MBA admissions is so much more than that. And for the last 6 years has been my platform of I would love people to learn that there's just so much more to you than just little data points, in your application.
Okay. Shelley, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So agree with everything that Morgan said. I'll try to layer onto that perhaps some even tips in the application process that would, make you stand out. So, Morgan talked a lot about academic preparedness. Yes, absolutely. We're going to look at your, test scores or any quantitative classes that you had to take in undergrad as a measure of, can you complete the quantitative portions of the classroom? I think any of our schools would say, an MBA is not a school where we try to flunk a lot of people out, right? We're admitting students that we want to be successful and will be successful. And so we really dive into your transcripts. That being said, if you're thinking about a standardized test, I absolutely recommend taking it at least twice. Probably not taking it more than 3 times. You're statistically not going to do better after the 3rd time, but taking it twice shows us that you put forth the effort, that you're, that you are, that you're in this game to be competitive. As you kind of come down to the last couple of weeks of studying, yes, focus on both sections, but focus a little bit more on quant, right? Coming from India, in native English, we're going to look more at your quantitative abilities and skills. I think the next thing is, what are your career goals, and being able to articulate them so that they are specific, but not too specific. I think when I see, red flags, it's people that give the precise title at the precise company in the precise city, and that is only what they want. And while it is important maybe to have direction, I think we've learned in this economy, it's also important to be flexible, right? And so, what are you interested in, but maybe what are also some different options, right? So, so thinking about that. I think the other red flag, if you're too specific, is when I've seen people say I'm interested in CPG and finance and tech and maybe some nonprofit, and so that's all over the place. I think that leads us to pause and say, maybe they need another year to think about what they really want to to do. The other is, I would say, fit, but within that, interest in school. We know that students are applying to 5 or 6 schools. That's typical. I think when we see students applying to 10 to 12 schools and there's nothing about those schools that are similar, we start to wonder, well, are you interested in our school? Kind of what is it that you want? And so make sure that when you're doing your interview, if you're invited to interview at any of our schools, or you interact with us, that you can, articulate why you're interested in the program, in the school, in the city. We want students who want to be, we love our schools. We want students to be at our schools. So just, not doing a 5-minute research before your interview and giving everything from the front page of the website, really digging into why you're interested. And then I will say, application deadlines, as visa processes have gotten trickier over the year, the 3 of us would always say, apply early, but apply when you're ready. I would layer on to that, keep the visa process in mind, right? It's out of your control. The application deadline within your control, preparation for it within your control, but this whole visa appointments, denials, all of that. So keep that in mind as you prepare and think about which deadline you want to target. I'll stop there.
So just like Shay, I will try to not say things that maybe has already been said for the most part, but maybe try to add a little extra clarity with a little bit of obviously the Tepper bent to this. So when we look at applications, I think the best way to say this, I'm going to tell you how we really review applications. We start with career first because that gives us a good basis uh, to understand you as a candidate. That's also typically the biggest reason that someone's coming back for graduate school. So if we start with career, that really helps us understand that fit piece a little bit better. And can we meet those expectations of being this partner on this MBA journey with you? And I emphasize that word partner because all these different things, every top school that you look at is going to be great at a lot of different things. And we're going to set up this environment for you to be successful, but you need to take advantage of those opportunities to really, make the most out of those programs. So if we understand career goals, we then go to your resume next. So what does your work history look like? Have you had progressions? Is this a big pivot? Is it a small pivot? It kind of gives us a little bit of sense of you. And then we start going through other pieces. We'll go through test scores and transcripts next. And I'll add some information on tests because I know that's like one of these big decisions. This environment is different than any other time applying to business schools in history in the way that every school may or may not have a test waiver option. Every school may prioritize maybe one test over another, or maybe have other options, right? And like an EA, right? That has kind of come up, and a lot of schools are now considering that in some full-time programs, which I won't share stats for others. Like EA is actually a decent now percentage of their class. What I would say is when you're thinking through this and you get your target list of schools, have that conversation with that school to see if there is a preference, if you want to do that. And I'll give you even more information here about that. So we're always looking at transcripts and test scores to make sure you can be successful in the classroom. But you also need to kind of understand as an applicant, like you could still do well in both of those and you may be admissible for a school, but are you going to be competitive to the pool? Right. So I think that those are those extra things. When Shelley said, take the test twice, right? Just because you get a score and you feel like, oh, I'm above whatever bar someone said that I'm intelligent enough to be there. The second piece of all this is not only like, can you get admission, but like, what is that scholarship package? Are you going to be able to essentially be able to say yes to this offer in the end? And I agree with Shelley on like, I think most schools will tell you they'll look at quant probably first or maybe a little bit more heavily than the other sections. But we also have to think through some other things of like the GMAT took away the writing section. The GRE still has a writing section. Not that we do everything based on rankings, but the methodology has changed year over year and year. Now they use the GRE as all three sections, quant, verbal, and writing, as one composite score to compare it to a GMAT score. So if you go GRE, don't throw away the writing section, because even if you knocked it out of the park on those other two, you're going to make it really hard for that school to say, I want to accept that test score. So ask the schools. Test scores are so different from school to school now that I do think it's a good question as long as you're asking an informed question. Beyond that, everybody said about the fit, but I guess I'll add just like my perspective on this real quick is that we try our best to tell you about our school, to tell you what's important to us, our values. We're very intentional about our essay questions, like all these things. Like we're trying to be as open as honest about what we care about. But because of the volume of candidates, we cannot always be 100% expert on every single candidate. So that is a little bit on the candidate to say, I've researched your school. I see all of these different fit points, and maybe it's career or academics or student community. It's okay to weave those things in. Like if you can paint the story of why it's a fit, then the likelihood is the school or the interview is also going to see that fit. If you can't paint that picture of why it's a fit, then it's probably going to be hard for us to get there as well, right? So the point of the research is making sure that you're finding those things that make sense rather than just applying because you're a top 10 school or you're a top 15 school or whatever that may be. Last thing, because I think that this is important when we were talking about, Shelley had also brought up about like, your essay about career and where do you want to be. I agree with her that you don't have to have all the answers, but when you say something, you need to have thought through what that answer is. And I'll give you an example. Over the last 5 years, probably the most sought after career has been consulting. And the most common answer is I would like to go MBB, right? Like everybody says they want to go towards like the top tier of whatever industry they want to go for. One of my favorite questions to ask on that is, okay, well, choose one of the MBBs and tell me why. that company is a good fit for you, why you want to work with that one in particular. If you can't answer that question, then all that tells me is that you haven't put as much thought into, you didn't do a whole lot of research. And for me, it's not that it's a bad answer, you're going to get denied because of that, but I can't put as much stock into that answer of like, this is a well-informed answer, or I know how you're going to make decisions. All I know is that you just want to go after a top-tier consulting job. So those that stand out in the process have reasons behind their answers, not just a general answer. I'll stop there.
So what I'm hearing from all of you is that it's not just what is in the application itself, but the way that they put it up to show commitment through the way that they're presenting the application is also very, very important. Okay, so I just have two questions coming in. One of them is regarding, so someone mentioned that if they already have a PhD, can they still apply to business school? Would they still be considered a candidate?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think more importantly than your credential is what you want to do post MBA. Like, why did you get the PhD and now why are you getting the MBA and what do you want to do with it? So if you can articulate that to us, that's how you're going to articulate it to employers. There's been sometimes I think if someone, for example, has a PhD or if they have above maybe 10 years of work experience, when we'll pick up the phone and say, talk to us more about this, or here's how your recruitment process may look different than the typical kind of MBB, iBank, churning MBAs. It just may look different, and if you're okay with that, then that's fine. But nothing automatically excludes you in general from applying.
That's good to know. So moving towards a little more current topics and how that may be impacting the admissions process going forward. With the advent of AI and GPT, how are you evaluating applications or even just reviewing essays, since a lot of people tend to use GPT nowadays? Has your process changed? Has your approach changed?
I'm happy to tackle this one. AI is a part of our lives. I think for a while, specifically last year, I feel like it was when Chat GPT kind of really became popular. We were nervous. And, the thing is Chat GPT is a tool. And if you're using it as a tool to say, hey, I just want to write this better or, clearly or something, or to help you in saying, hey, I just, want to research about it and use it to help gather information. I think that's fine. If you're using it as a replacement for your work, that's where it's not fine. And I think that's a really clear thing is how are you using Chat GPT? Are you using it as a tool to help you or to do research or are you using it as a replacement to say, hey, I'm going to type in Fuqua's 25 random facts about myself and have it write it? Because we have taken our essay prompts and put them into Chat GPT, so we know what's going to come out of the machine. And the thing is you're not going to get you're going to get very generic things because Chat GPT does not know you. It only knows what you put into the system, and you cannot put your full story of work and everything into the system that's going to write an essay. I will say, I remember last year in reading applications, there was one essay that I was reading and was like, this just feels very vague. Their voice just seems very different from other things. And when I got into committee, someone said, well, that's interesting because this matches that person is very similar to this essay. And so we can tell when things just aren't genuine, aren't authentic, aren't in depth. And so, I think when it comes to the admissions process, use it a tool if you're wanting to say hey, can you tell me things about the clubs at Fuqua or something. But if you're saying hey, can you please write this essay for me? That's the issue. But AI is here to stay. We're having classes that talk about AI. It's going to become part of our lives. The real question is how you use it. And the thing is I haven't seen anyone use it to replace their work. and done it well. So it's not advantageous for you in that respect, but certainly you can use it to help research. You could sit there and type in the prompt right now. Can you compare Carnegie Mellon, sorry, got tongue-tied there, Duke and Georgetown, and it will give you a whole bunch of things about our schools, but are you using it as a tool or as a replacement? And the replacement is where the issue is.
Ellie, JR, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I mean, I would say along what Morgan said, like we are kind of getting schooled as admissions officers on what an answer looks like if it's been ChatGPT generated. And do you kind of want to take that risk? Like, do you want us to think that it was ChatGPT generated and or just spend a little extra time kind of personalizing it? Also, I think many of us, Georgetown in particular, like we rewrote our essay prompts such that you have to provide a pretty personal or professional example. And sure, there's probably ways to get GPTs to somehow answer that, but like you have to provide a really personal example that's not generic. So it would be kind of hard to do, at least as of now. Fast forward a year, who knows? Maybe ChatGPT will read our mind. But yeah.
Only thing to add, because I 100% agree with the kind of like the tool scenario there. We're going to ask about it in the interview. So just like I talked about company stuff, right? Like if it just stays flat and you don't have a whole lot and we don't see passion about it, it's not going to be a good interview score for you on that component of it. So please use it as a tool. That's all.
That's fair. That makes sense. And a follow-up on this, are you seeing any AI-based programs that are coming up in your universities? Has anything been introduced yet?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we do have a concentration in AI. And in particular, so when we started doing coursework in it, we had, I think, 3 courses that were really already being taught within our program, and that's where it started. 2 months later, we now have 12 courses, and that's growing now. We brought up like that interdisciplinary thing earlier, and I think that's how our list has grown so much. So AI was really started on the Carnegie Mellon campus. So we have a huge ecosystem there. So we know that we are not the experts in every area of it. So we're going to push you to go over to computer science or engineering or other places to really get some of that. But the good news for you on that is that when I said before, we like to push your learning there, you can take those classes pass fail because we have no expectation that you're going to go over to computer science, which is the #1 school in the world for computer science, and do well. Not every student. There are some that have that background that maybe, have those chops to do it, but for the most part, most of our students don't, but they want to immerse themselves in that environment or talk to those that are really working on that cutting edge technology. So for us, that ecosystem is continued to grow. Obviously there's stuff on our website, but Post and Quants put out a big, feature on us in terms of AI. So I would say check out not only our website, but check out others and how they're talking about it.
We have we're in the process of developing like a mini course about artificial intelligence, but I think the thing too, if I can add, is probably when it comes to business school, a lot of schools, AI is just going to be woven into like case studies they're looking at and all the things, because AI isn't just AI, it's AI in healthcare, it's AI in energy and environment. So I think the great thing about business school is you're usually learning from professors that are experts in the field and the industry and are pulling from different examples. For example, after COVID, a lot of our classes talked about the impact of COVID on supply chain, on healthcare, on various different things. And AI is certainly, I think, no different as well.
Yep. I was reading a career report research recently, and I think there's this hesitation, a trepidation about, will AI replace jobs? And potentially it will add other jobs, but I think it's more you have to understand AI. You have to have the basic terminology, conversational skills of AI to even manage staff. A lot of times doing an MBA, you're not the SME on certain topics, you're managing those SMEs, subject matter experts. And so you've got to get conversational in AI and do it as quickly as possible with all the resources. And we as business schools are in the process of doing that. We want our students to be successful and our graduates to be successful. So yeah, it's an exciting journey. The world's changing quick.
It's interesting. Yeah, definitely. I think even in general, AI is such a new topic. Like, even though it seems like we know a lot, there's still so much to still be discovered that even the people that may seem like experts are still learning themselves. We're still learning so much more about AI. There's so much more that's coming up. So it's really interesting and exciting to see where this will go. So in terms of the upcoming elections that are coming up in the US, what are your thoughts on the visa processes for international students? How do you see that going or affecting the admissions process intake?
You know, I mean, every year is a new year, right? I think the big takeaway that we've frankly learned from the past couple of years, because there's been a lot of visa challenges these past 2 years or so, you know, especially from the continent of Africa, also from India. So I think we've all learned that you've got to prepare and apply early, right? So, you know, kind of learn the process as much as you can early in the process. Like, don't wait till you've just been admitted to like open up and learn how to apply for the visa, understand what documentation you need, understand how you're going to fund and finance the degree. Because whether it's the election, whether it's something else happening in the world, whether it's a country specific situation, you just don't know. And so prepare early, get advice, talk with students that are now in our schools that have gone through the visa process, and they will give you a laundry list of tips to help. So I'm not going to project what's going to happen or, you know, what will happen. I would just say it's always better to be prepared with visas.
I would agree with Shelley on that. I wish we could predict or project things. We'd be making a lot of money on those predictions and what the outcomes might be. You know, I will share kind of for our admitted students, usually the visa process can begin as early as February, and that's where getting documents. I think just for insight of what I've seen with our students, I haven't really seen, with the exception of COVID, which I think every region was seeing crazy things with visas, is I haven't seen like major problems. In India, I think always sometimes the challenge can just be one of those interview spots opening up, and that can kind of create panic. And unfortunately, that's not something, you know, the schools have control over. So I always tell students, like, don't panic, you know, just keep us updated. But I think exactly to Shelley's point, I couldn't agree more, like, be ready, you know, because there's a lot of people applying for visas and you want to have everything lined up. So definitely listen to the advice from, you know, your school that you're admitted to as far as hitting those deadlines and getting ahead of those deadlines. Like, don't wait till the day before, because, you know, that's where we do sometimes see like delays, and those people are usually the last ones to get the visa appointments, and you need to get us your documents before you can even start, you know, going for your interview.
Agreed. I'll add just one little clarity point here, and it's hard, right? Because like now I know most of us on the call have been doing this for so many different presidential elections, and like you can always learn from previous things. But there's no guarantee that it'll go the same way. If you think of the timeline of this, and to kind of reemphasize Shelley and Morgan's points of, you know, those that are probably like a round 1, round 2 applicant this year will have less impact than others, because presidential election in November, you get sworn in January. What are, like, you know, the things that are most important to you? Like, there's likely other immigration things that'll take priority. So like the likelihood of things changing before May, June, July, August for student visas is probably unlikely. So those that are in the process early will have less impact. Now, the things that we don't know, right? Like, this all gets tied back to H-1B, and it gets tied back to STEM extension and all these other things. Like, do we know how that will go depending on how the presidential election will go? So like those are things that could impact you that are more unclear during your MBA journey. But overall, you know, I would say like the initial stages of that will likely have less impact for those that are early in the process for this year. Personal opinion, don't know if it'll exactly roll the same way, but when we're talking about the last 4 or 8 years, like the last 2 presidential elections, that's typically how it went.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for the information, actually. Yeah, for first students. So we have a question. What kind of transportation or supply chain related innovation centers or initiations do you have in your universities? Do you have any?
I don't know about you guys. I
Sorry.
didn't quite hear
Yeah.
the question. Your
I was
audio
going to
was
ask for the
breaking up a
question again
little
too,
bit.
because I tried to look in the chat and I couldn't see it. So
Sorry. Yeah, the Centers for Innovations, Analytics, and Strategy.
What about them?
And
We didn't hear your full question. Your
okay.
audio was going out the entire time.
Sorry. So do your universities have any centers for innovations, analytics, and strategy? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, I'll kind of popcorn around. Yes, we have a Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So you can do co-curricular opportunities. There are certainly electives. You can do startup, pitches, entrepreneurs in residence. Strategy is more within our, I would say, elective area and, our consulting experiences. And then AI, I think the AI analytics, sorry. We have, like 20 electives in data and analytics. We have an analytics club. And so I think these type of things are going to be called differently at most business schools, but I would venture to say a lot of business schools have areas in these topics. These are the core business school kind of topics. They're just going to be called differently in different schools.
Yeah, so we have we have our Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And actually starting last year, all of entrepreneurship and innovation for all of Duke University is now housed under Fuqua, which is really exciting. We've added more entrepreneurship and innovation classes as part of the core curriculum as well, because we believe no matter what you're going into, those are good things to have and have that entrepreneurial mindset. So that's part of the core curriculum as well. But really that center really helps to drive like startup challenges, bring in guest speakers, host conferences, very involved. And especially now that the other schools that are associated with Duke University are kind of coming in as well, it's just really growing the opportunities. It's expanding the alumni network as well that our students can interact and work with. And so that's been really exciting to see. As far as analytics and strategy, those are kind of more part of our concentrations or certificates that people can take if they want to dive deeper into it. We don't have a specific center for that.
What about you, Jared? Anything at Carnegie Mellon?
yeah, so I'm going to say like the same thing to others. So we have all these different centers, but when I saw the then question get posted again, it said about transportation operations as well. So I feel like we're now when we're talking about how does one functional area weave into another. What I'll say is that's probably going to be the case where you look at does the school have both of those strengths, right? More like an operations, supply chain, and entrepreneurship and innovation. Because to my knowledge, right, we've been in multiple schools. Very seldom would you have that narrow focus just because of you can do anything with an MBA. So there's likely going to be some of those crossovers, but there's likely not going to be a transportation innovation center. I mean, I'm not an expert in every school in the world, so there could be a school out there that has that specific one, but you probably need to look at the cross section of the school strengths rather than is there a specific center just in that. Or maybe, and this is where we usually don't go this granular, but it's a super specific question. Check out faculty members, see what they're doing research in, right? So look at supply chain and operations and see if they have done specific work. Are they on committees or, for the national government or major things like that you could possibly then work more directly with someone like that. Yeah. Interesting question. And could be a really good fit somewhere.
So it's more of a diverse range of specific centers, specific areas to cover. That makes sense. So another thing someone asked is if they were to do an MIM degree and then want to pursue their MBA, would that be an option?
I know for Fuqua, there's certain degree, certainly if they did an MIM, applying to our full-time program, that is possible. We do offer an accelerated MBA program that's 1 year. It doesn't mean that we just, your classes are longer and you jam-pack 2 years in. What it really is if you've taken certain MIM programs, A PGDM does not count, but an MIM program might exempt you from some of the core classes that then you're left taking just a couple of core classes and the rest would be electives. So there is that route for people. I will say our accelerated MBA program is a very small cohort because it's very niche of what MIM degrees count. I think if it was open to the PGDM, we'd have a lot more people applying to that program. But so if you have an MIM program and you're wanting to do the full year or full 2-year MBA experience, that's not an issue. I think going back to even the PhD question, it's always just explaining, why and why does this make sense for your story?
I think for us, typically our MIM degree is for people right out of undergrad. So in typical, if you come right out of undergrad, we do require 2 years of full-time work experience to start the full-time MBA. So you wouldn't be able to go straight from undergrad to a MIM to an MBA. You'd have to kind of stop and then get work experience. Now, if you had work experience, you did a MIM and you have, so you could think about it that way. But, I would question, a MIM is a general management degree, and then an MBA is a general management degree. They're typically targeted toward different experience levels, and then the types of jobs or the employers that are recruiting out of those degrees, the job titles are a little different, right? So if you go straight from undergrad and get a MIM, you shouldn't expect the same salary or title that someone with 5 years of professional work experience who's gone to get an MBA is going to expect, right? You'll be a little more qualified with a MIM plus a bachelor's than someone with just a bachelor's, but I don't know. So it's all about expectations. It's also about your long-term plan. But to answer the specific question, you can at Georgetown go directly from a MIM to an MBA because you have to have work experience. So.
Yeah, so holistic answer. We also have an MSM, so I don't know if that's where someone was also possibly interested in doing one or they already have one. So if they're interested in that, we do have that program. We do have, if you go through ours, a leave and return policy, almost like what Shelley just said there. Exactly, if you finish that MS degree, you need to go get work experience. If you don't already have it, it's not about always doing it after, but like needing to have enough work experience to then be able to be competitive at the MBA level. And we do have 2 accelerated formats, both full-time and part-time. So depending on how you would want to do that, even if you don't do our MSM degree, a MIM would possibly qualify you for the accelerated program on the MBA side. So it really just depends exactly where this in particular candidate is, but I think there could be options here at Tepper for them.
Okay, that's good to know. So in terms of financial aid, what are the options that are available for students in general, but maybe also specifically international students, and how could they apply for them? JR, you want to start?
I'll let JR start. I'll give him the honor.
Sure. So for us, we do merit-based scholarships. You don't have to apply for them. We're not trying to trick you in any way. Everybody gets evaluated for a merit scholarship. Scholarships for full-time MBA program go from anywhere to not offering scholarship the whole way up to full tuition and fees. And then if you're interested in other program formats, we don't have full scholarships in a lot of the other formats, but we do have scholarship programs in every program. I would say this of, a lot of kind of goes back to maybe one of my earlier answers. This is where I think you need to start thinking through, like, how does your application look? Are you competitive to the pool? Like, if you need to be at the top end of a scholarship range, I don't think that that's a bad question to talk about with an admissions officer per se, but I think you need to go into it more with like a very well-informed, very like, if I wanted to be in this level, what does that look like? Is there something that I can do to make sure that I am at the highest competitive level in different aspects that your program looks at? But that's, I don't know if that answers it fully, but I know this is always like that tough topic because on a full-time side, the scholarship range is so broad. And it's always hard because I know everybody, I think all 3 of us on the call probably say we wish we lived in a world where education was free for everyone, but that's not where we live. So like happy to kind of work with candidates to figure out if we can put together something that would work for them.
Yeah, echo holistic review. We look at everything in your application. When you receive an admissions decision, hopefully you're receiving an admissions decision, you would also find out the time of admission if you're awarded a scholarship. So you don't need to do anything different. It is based on a holistic review. So academics, your undergraduate transcript, your job, your career, your interview, look at our class profiles. And, if you're falling on the bottom range of all the criterias, not to say that you won't be competitive, but, there are a lot of students that, may fall above in all the areas. And so that may make them more competitive. And I think it's really important what JR said of like, not waiting until May or June to figure out how you're going to finance the degree. Yes, we all provide full rides, but they're very limited, like very limited. And so I think some people think, coming in, wow, there's like so many full rides, or frankly, even so many like 3/4 rides. And that's just not the case. At least at Georgetown, it's not the case. So don't wait until the very last minute to figure out how you're going to fund it, because we get to know you really well and we really like you. You get to know us and you really like us. And then all of a sudden the finances don't work out and it's a tough conversation on both of our sides. And so we'd rather kind of start it early, have you be transparent, so that we can direct you in the right direction, because at the very last minute, that's also, you're running into visa challenges as well. If you can't figure out the finances, you can't get the visa, you can't, and then you don't get to come to our school. So, yeah, that's what I would recommend.
I agree with everything Shelley and JR mentioned. At least at Fuqua, we only award merit-based scholarships. So that also makes it really hard because we can't do it based on need. And kind of JR's point, we'd love that if we could say, oh yes, like we really like you and we just want to give you more money. We wish education was free. This is a big investment. And I think that sometimes does get lost. And I would agree with Shelley, like at least at Fuqua, like full rides are few and far between. Majority of our students are taking out some type of student loan to pay for their education, even domestic students. It's not just internationals, like domestic students as well. When it comes to need-based financial need, that's where student loans come in, and we don't really have control over those student loans or some of those interest rates. But we award merit-based scholarship. We're looking at your application and those merits, and every year I get asked, what range can I expect? And I usually tell people, like, bank on like lower or no scholarship, because then you'll be pleasantly surprised, because it really changes on the applicant pool and everything. And so it's hard, and I would agree with Shelley, like it just is, it can be challenging, when you like the school, we like you and everything. So definitely when we talk about visa stuff, like before you apply to MBA programs, like do look at your finances. Not many schools do need-based, some do, but especially those that you're applying to merit-based, be prepared and know kind of like, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do.
If I can add on to something, because I want to definitely leave on a positive note, and that's really kind of like the ROI, or sometimes the hidden ROI of various parts of the experience. So, yes, you look at the sticker shock perhaps of the tuition, but then I think you really have to gravitate towards the post MBA salaries, and especially in some finance, tech, consulting careers, and with the STEM designation that I think all three of us have. You can work in the US for 3 years without an H-1B visa. And so it's only once that 3 years hits that then you have to compete for a visa in the lottery system. The other thing is signing bonuses. They can be really high in some of these industries. I mean, I think, $30,000, $40,000 in some of the top industries can be really high. And so think about how that can immediately be applied back to your loans or tuition. Some of us have abilities to work at the school during the program, which helps with, basic living expenses. Some of us have abilities where you can, work up to 20 hours a week, even within your CPT status. And then, the other thing, like the internships between year 1 and year 2, in most industries, they're paid, and sometimes between $7,000, $9,000 a month, which if you're savvy about how you live and expenses, that can also help. So So don't just think about the post-MBA salary and the tuition cost, but kind of everything else that can layer in to just help get you through. I'm not endorsing these three, but I'm sure you've heard about, Prodigy, Empower, and Juno. They do provide funding to international students. If you haven't heard of them already, feel free to check out their websites. They're separate organizations, but.
Oh, nice. Thank you for that information. I'm sure it'll be really helpful for the students. And what I'm hearing is it'll mostly be merit-based scholarships and nothing that a student can apply to specifically for. Okay. So we have a question from someone who is wanting to start their own venture post-education and wants to know what would be better suited, MIM, MBA, or other specialized management programs oriented towards entrepreneurship.
It's kind of going to depend on the school. So I think you got to check out the various things that you just mentioned at the various schools that you're thinking about, because they all have different resources, different access. I don't know.
I think it also depends on like what kind of startup, where are you at in the process, all of that. There's a lot of, I have a lot of follow-up questions to that one to be able to answer it clearly.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so to wrap up, if you had one piece of advice to give to students interested in applying to university or to your programs, what would it be?
So I'll jump in real quick. I'm sorry, I also have like a hard stop right at 11, so I'll throw this quick piece of advice in. I would say talk to community members, right? Like we all try to put as much stuff on the website, and there's some, you can do a lot of different research. I think it's helpful for you to talk to those in the community, because then it can answer maybe some of those nuanced questions, right? Today, like we've learned that on this webinar, some people get like really specific or granular, or what about my specific situation? So I would say talk to those in the community, alumni, current students, so that way maybe you can kind of understand some of those things. So that way, when you get into the situations where you're either like submitting your application, getting in the interview, you have a little bit more information to be able to articulate that fit, be able to showcase why this is that right program for you. And I think that advice really can be invaluable. However, the only one caveat to that is if it is about the application process now, so much has changed in the last 2 to 3 years. Don't ask an alum if you should take a GMAT or a GRE. Don't ask them if you should do a test waiver. Don't ask them some of these other things, because they don't know. Their process was so different. You need to talk to the people on this call or our teams, because it's going to be more like recent than anybody else's experience. So get to know people if you can.
And I think that's great advice, JR. I would echo that, like definitely, learning about the schools. And I think too, the biggest thing, like application advice I would offer is before you hit submit, have somebody else read through your application. I think that can really sometimes save those little mistakes that people will submit. Take time in putting together an application. Like we know most likely than not, you're applying to multiple schools, and that's fine. We don't want to know about it. And so make sure your essays are really tailored and written. I forget who mentioned it here, but our essays are very specific to our schools. They're all different. And it's really hard to take maybe Tepper's essay question and fit it into Fuqua's. So take the time to, research every school, to write their essays, have someone read your application, and just take time and pride in your application. That's the thing that's in, we're looking at. And so just have somebody else read through it. It can be really, really helpful.
Great. Yeah, there's a lot of upcoming, certainly we all welcome you to our campuses, but there's a lot of upcoming online events that we all will have, virtual tours, panels. They're all going to kind of start this month for all of our schools. So get to know us through those. The more you learn about the various programs, the more people you meet from the various schools, you'll start to really form an opinion about that school. The other thing I will say is, don't stress so much about which school is the perfect school, right? All the top business schools in the US, they are going to provide you a great education. You're going to have access to top employers. A lot of it is what makes what you make it of it yourself. And so at the end of the day, you're going to do great. This is an experience that you will not regret. It's an investment in yourself that will only appreciate over time. And we wish you the best of luck. And if you need anything, we're all here for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the insights. I think it was really interesting. Everything. I learned a lot today myself. So thank you for your time and thank you for helping our students. I hope it can be a wonderful admissions process for you this year.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye.